How is everybody doing this morning? This is L.A.Kendrick with another tale from the vault of Would You Dare. We have another horrifying, haunted situation. And this one comes from the Devil's Punch Bowl in Natchez, Mississippi. Adams County to be exact, right? You know how we do. We just find a spot, we pull up, and we just talk about it and go at the discussions. A lot of history with these last two that I've done. Things that I didn't know when I was in school. So I wish we had learned these things in school. But remember, it's raw and unedited. And again, this is for the fans of the work. This is dealing with hauntings and spirits and horrible atrocities and mutilations. And, you know, I'm going to go right into it, basically. Make sure that you like, share, comment, and subscribe. We're at 115, trying to get up to that 120 mark. And, again, when you start talking about certain topics, it seems like YouTube wants to block them, or they really fall short of what the numbers they normally would achieve if you weren't talking about specific subjects and topics. But again, we're doing this because I'm trying to give back to the fans. Even though these last two that I'm doing now, you know, it kind of takes the wind out of your sail, but it is true history. And I'm going to share a story also with you with one of the gentlemen that I knew that discussed and talked about stuff like this in detail. But the party don't start till you walk in, and now that you're here, let's begin. All right. This is Devil's Punch Bowl of Mississippi, a story. This was Monday, 12/11/1865. Remember that date and that year, okay? The Devil's Punch Bowl episode is remembered on this date in 1865. The post-American Civil War atrocity in Black history took place in Natchez, Adams County, Mississippi. As Black slaves made their way to freedom, the town of Natchez quickly went from a population of 10,000 to near 100,000 people. My apologies. In order to deal with the population influx of recent freedmen, a concentration camp was established by Union soldiers to essentially eradicate the slaves. Don Estes, ESTES, former director of Natchez City Cemetery, said, so they decided to build an encampment camp form at Devil's Punch Bowl, which they walled off and wouldn't let them out. The camp was called the Devil's Punch Bowl because of the way the area is shaped. The camp was located at the bottom of a cavernous pit with trees located on the bluffs above. The women and children were locked behind the concrete walls of the camp and left to die from starvation. And from what I understand, also the men were actually put out in the daytime and worked hard, strenuous labor, just like they did if they were slaves. Now, remember, these were free people. Researcher Paula Westbrook asked that the Union Army did not allow them to remove the bodies. Let me back up a second. So the women and the children were left to die from starvation behind the walls of the camp. Many also died from the smallpox disease. In total, over 20,000 free slaves were killed in 1 year. Dang. Inside of this American concentration camp, Black men were recaptured by the Union and forced back into hard labor. So they worked on both on the inside and the out. Researcher Paula Westbrook adds that the Union Army did not allow them to remove bodies from the camp. They just gave them shovels and said, bury them where they dropped. Today, the bluffs are known for the wild peach groves, but the locals will not eat any of the fruit because some are aware of what has fertilized the trees. Human remains, human bodies. Oh boy. So, yeah. Estate said that during his studies, he learned that the women and children were all but left to die in the three punch bowls. Disease broke out among them, smallpox being the main one, and thousands died. They were begging to get out. Turn me loose and I'll go back home to the plantation. Anywhere but here. And one researcher has noted that skeletal remains still wash up when the area becomes flooded by the Mississippi River at the Devil's Punch Bowl. So there you have that. Now I talked to a guy, good guy. He's transitioned now, but it was a great guy that he had mentioned something like this to me. He had mentioned the Devil's Punch Bowl, and they said that people won't go there, or when you do, you have bad experience of hauntings and black dogs. If you guys know what the black dogs are, where they're apparitions, basically hellhounds, and they attack mostly people that are white. Now, again, I'm just relaying a story. Not sure how true it is, but they say you see all kinds of apparitions, phantoms, ghosts, people having their hair touched and moved. And he told me that people that he knew from there would discuss a lot of times how the descendants of the white perpetrators of this atrocity, a lot of them were killed. Some of them were scared to death. Scared from fright. Things followed them home, drove them insane, drove them crazy. They didn't prosper very well. Basically, the spirits were at unrest, and they still are. Something that atrocious, man. Come on, think about it. You know, common sense would say that a spirit has an energy that goes beyond what we see here on earth. And to top that off, when you combine tragedy and an injustice such as this to this level, you're going to have a residual effect no matter what. Said that he also told me that some people will be, used to run around in the area or close to that area, and they would be jogging. Some of the white folk would be jogging, they'd break a leg, twist an ankle. Trees would fall on, tree branches would fall on them, causing them severe injury. He comes from a timeline where Mr. Pettis come from a timeline where a lot of his family came directly out of the slave trade. And again, these people were free. These people weren't slaves. And even if they were, it wouldn't have mattered. It doesn't matter. You treat people like humans. But once they got their freedom, they still were treated this way. And this is likened to like a lot of the hauntings that they say go on over in Germany with some of the Nazi camps in nearby areas. There's always a price to pay when you mistreat people in this form and in this fashion. And slavery is the worst thing that's ever happened to this country in the history of humanity. I don't care what anybody says. That's my take. And you pray to a spirit, and then you mistreat spirits once they transition. And the spirit says that, you're not supposed to treat people that way. The Holy Ghost says you're not supposed to treat people that way, according to Scripture. And if these things have happened, like Mr. Pettis was telling me, I wouldn't doubt it. He said, it's just a place you just don't go at night. You'll see lights, orbs, energy. He said he didn't see, he was telling me that it didn't really affect the black folk that went through that area, unless you were, like he liked to say, sellouts and coons. Then you'd see that then. But most of the people that had the terrible luck and the deaths and the family and the illnesses, even had illnesses, was the white folk. And probably direct descendants. He said direct descendants and some people that were just white passerbys. So it's an area, and again, you got to think, look at Mississippi. Still to this day, they hold on to these tropes where they want to mistreat you just because of the color of your skin. They got those sundown towns there. And I don't know, man. I believe it. I believe that happens. These spirits are reaching out from the grave, and they're going to get their justice one way or the other. As scary as that sounds, and some of these apparitions are just, he said, it said some of the people that he knew, they're just horrifying. Like, scare your hair white when you happen to see the ones like the decaying skin and the flesh because of what they went through, man. Those children, those women, those poor people, man, that, some of my people. And it's a tough thing. They don't teach us in school. You have to literally dig up this information to find out the truth on some of these scenarios that happen. And there's a big percentage of this country that doesn't want to accept the fact that there's a lot of wrong done, man. It's still being perpetrated to this day. That's why that critical race theory thing kind of doesn't make any sense, because it's history. Whatever they're trying to identify critical race theory as. Because if that's the case, you need to throw away. If you're not going to talk about the truth in all of its aspects in the U.S. history, you can't talk about any of it. You shouldn't even teach history in school. If this is the route you want to go, you shouldn't teach history at all in school. But slavery and racism is a very, very big part of this country. It's how this country was founded. It is simple as that. You ain't got to agree with me, and I'm not trying to make this a sermon, but I'm just pointing out what happens. And what happened to these good people, forced back into slavery, forced back into bondage. And, I can't even imagine, what they went through looking for freedom and looking for a better life. And all you got was death, hell, and torment. And not necessarily in that order. They fought for their freedom, and you have this. Again, some states wouldn't even let them know, like Texas didn't even let them know that they were freed until, 1865 was when slaves were supposed to have been freed. And then you go to, I think it was 1867 when they actually were forced to let them go. The ones that didn't escape on their own power. But that's a bloody footprint, man. He said it was a lot of horrible things happening to these people. They'd be sitting at the dinner table and blood would come out of their eyes. The white folk that had dared ventured into this area. Scratches on their back, neck, strangulation to the point of almost death. And then they would come back and be, again, tortured until their last breath. And some of the white folk, he told me, would come clean on their deathbed about what had happened and how they, how they were direct descendants of the people of the Union and the Confederacy or whatever that held the black folk and the freed people. They weren't slaves. Let's get that straight. That tortured and tormented their souls, and that's why the souls are still in limbo. A lot of souls are still in limbo, and if they're washing up, the skeletal remains are washing up, man. When the Mississippi River floods in that area, it's almost like Poltergeist. If you guys remember the movie Poltergeist, they actually use real skeletons. Which is crazy. Like, I don't understand the mindset of some people. These people are supposed to be at rest and at peace. And here you are digging up their bones and their bodies and using them as props in a movie. And you notice a lot of the people in the original Poltergeist, a lot of the original cast are dead. They said it was all kinds of crazy stuff going on the Poltergeist set. So, so think about it now in that context. This is what we're dealing with. And it goes on. And whether you want to talk about it or not, I bet the people in Mississippi know exactly what I'm talking about. I guarantee they don't go to that spot because they know that if you can hear my voice, then what I'm talking about is true. Some actual facts to this. Now, to what degree, I don't know, but they said it's just crazy in that area. If you go and you're white or you're a descendant of the people that harmed those freed people, held them against their will in concentration camp. So then again, and that I'm gonna wrap it up because I don't want to get too deep into it. But I would just say that's when you say reparations, and it's like, okay, now that's a bad thing. But everybody when I think of the name and concentration encampment and things like that, I think about the Japanese when they were, held like that, and then they got compensated several times over. And to this day, they still get compensation for it. But when African Americans, Foundational Black Americans, FBAs, I notice when we mention it, it's like it's a bad thing. And no, we can't do anything for you. We don't have any avenues. And let's think about it first. And I'm thinking, you never think about that when you talk about other groups. It's just tough. And I don't want to get off too far into it because, yeah, a lot of people can't handle that truth. But would you dare want to be caught out there in those fields, in that area, see what they've saw, see what they've seen, as far as the ghosts, the black dogs, the hellhounds, the strangulations, the scratches, the blood pouring from the eyes? Would you want to be any of those people that were responsible? Would you dare want to be any of those people responsible for the mistreatment and the torment of those lost souls that just wanted to have a better life? It's there. All right. So in closing, we'll wrap it up. Try to leave on a positive note, even though this is very, very sad and it's heartbreaking. These are my people, but this is a story that must be told and shared. Okay. So with that being said, this has been L.A.Kendrick. Make sure you check your closets, the dark recesses of your home. Make sure that if you work late at night, when it's dark outside, or early into the morning where there's limited light and visibility, make sure you check under your car. Make sure you check inside of your car before entering. And make sure you have a clear conscience and a clear soul, and you've repented and made right the wrongs you've done in your life. Because you never know what's lurking in the dark, waiting to exact revenge and make you a story. This has been L.A.Kendrick with another tale from the vault of Would You Dare? You guys, until next time, feeling the rest.